Is PAP still the same force that once drove Singapore's success, or has it lost its way? Singapore's founding leaders built a nation from almost nothing, turning it into one of the world's most successful economies. But as we approach the 2025 elections, one question keeps surfacing. Is the People's Action Party still the same force that once drove Singapore's success, or has it lost its way? Lee Kuan Yew had a clear vision, a disciplined, forward-thinking government that prioritized national growth above all else. But today, many Singaporeans wonder if the current leadership still follows that path. Rising costs of living, political shifts, and growing dissatisfaction have sparked debates about whether PAP's rule is as strong as it once was. Stay with us as we break down the key differences between Singapore's founding leaders and the government today. We'll explore leadership styles, economic policies, and public sentiment to uncover whether Singapore is heading for a political shift in 2025. Singapore is a nation built on discipline, innovation, and strategic governance. Its rapid rise from a small, resource-scarce island to a global economic powerhouse was no accident. It was the result of strong, decisive leadership. But in recent years, many Singaporeans have started drawing comparisons between the founding leaders of the People's Action Party, PAP, and the government of today. Why? Because the direction of Singapore's future depends on whether today's leadership still upholds the same principles that made the country successful in the first place. For decades, the PAP has been the dominant force in Singaporean politics. Under Lee Kuan Yew's leadership, the party transformed the nation with policies that prioritized economic growth, infrastructure development, and strict governance. His vision was clear. Singapore must be efficient, corruption-free, and globally competitive. The results were undeniable. Singapore became one of the most developed nations in the world, known for its stability, low crime rates, and world-class infrastructure. But leadership evolves, and so does the political landscape. After Lee Kuan Yew, successive leaders, including Goh Chok Tong and Lee Hsien Loong, carried the PAP legacy forward. However, today's government faces a different set of challenges: rising living costs, growing political opposition, and changing public expectations. Many Singaporeans feel that the PAP's leadership has shifted from national progress to political self-preservation, prioritizing policies that maintain control rather than push for bold economic and social reforms. This comparison matters because Singaporeans are no longer just looking at the past with nostalgia, they are questioning the future. With the 2025 elections approaching, more voters are asking, does the PAP still have the same drive to propel Singapore forward, or is it time for a political shift? Lee Kuan Yew and the founding leaders of Singapore had an unwavering vision, one that focused on transforming the nation from a struggling post-colonial state into a global economic powerhouse. Their governance style was characterized by strong, decisive leadership, long-term planning, and a relentless drive for national progress. Lee Kuan Yew believed in a government that was highly efficient, corruption-free, and deeply rooted in meritocracy. His administration prioritized economic growth, affordable public housing, and social stability, ensuring that Singaporeans had access to jobs, education, and a safe living environment. Policies such as the Housing Development Board (HDB), flats, Central Provident Fund (CPF), and the push for foreign investment laid the foundation for Singapore's prosperity. His leadership was strict, sometimes controversial, but undeniably effective. He was willing to make tough decisions for the sake of long-term national stability. Singaporeans respected his no-nonsense approach, knowing that it came with results: a booming economy, world-class infrastructure, and one of the lowest corruption rates globally. Fast forward to today, and while the People's Action Party, PAP, still governs Singapore, its leadership under Lee Hsien Loong faces new challenges. Unlike his father's era, where the focus was on nation building, today's PAP navigates a more complex global landscape: slower economic growth, geopolitical tensions, and rising living costs. Many Singaporeans feel that while the government continues to emphasize stability, its approach has become more bureaucratic and cautious. Critics argue that today's leadership prioritizes political control over bold economic reforms. With rising costs of living, an aging population, and concerns over foreign labor policies, there's growing sentiment that the PAP is more focused on maintaining its dominance rather than addressing the everyday struggles of citizens. The disconnect between the government and the people has led to a perception that today's leaders are out of touch compared to the founding generation. As Singapore heads toward the 2025 elections, the question remains, is the PAP still the driving force behind Singapore's success, or is it becoming a party that clings to power at the expense of the bold decision-making that once defined it? Singapore's economic success was built on bold policies and strategic long-term planning. Under the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew and the founding generation, the government implemented aggressive economic policies that prioritize industrialization, foreign investment, and national self-sufficiency. Singapore's transformation from a third-world country to a global financial hub was not accidental. It was the result of calculated decisions that ensured economic security for generations to come. In the early years, the People's Action Party focused on rapid industrialization, attracting multinational corporations with business-friendly policies, low taxes, and a highly skilled workforce. The Economic Development Board, EDB, played a key role in bringing in foreign investments, while government-led initiatives like Jurong Industrial Estate turned Singapore into a manufacturing powerhouse. This foreign investment-driven model allowed Singapore to become a major player in global trade and finance. At the same time, the government ensured that economic growth translated into tangible benefits for Singaporeans. The introduction of the Housing Development Board, HDB, provided affordable public housing, making homeownership accessible to the majority of citizens. The Central Provident Fund, CPF, was established as a mandatory savings scheme, ensuring that Singaporeans had financial security for retirement, housing, and healthcare. These policies were designed for long-term stability, and although they required sacrifices, such as strict governance and limited political freedoms, they resulted in economic security and a high standard of living. Fast forward to today, and Singapore's economic landscape looks very different. While the nation remains one of the wealthiest in the world, new challenges have emerged. The cost of living has skyrocketed, with housing affordability becoming a major concern for young Singaporeans. Wages have not risen at the same pace as expenses, making it harder for middle-class families to maintain the same level of financial security as previous generations. The PAP government now faces the challenge of balancing Singapore's high-cost economy with global competitiveness. Unlike in the past, where rapid industrialization was the priority, today's leadership must navigate issues such as income inequality, slowing GDP growth, and an aging population. Additionally, globalization and digital transformation mean that Singapore can no longer rely solely on foreign direct investment. It must adapt to new economic realities. Despite these challenges, the government has continued to push forward with economic policies such as Skills Future, aimed at retraining workers for a changing job market, and new housing policies to address affordability concerns. However, critics argue that these measures do not go far enough. Many Singaporeans feel that the government's response to rising costs and economic uncertainties has been slow and overly cautious compared to the bold, transformative policies of the past. As the 2025 elections approach, voters are asking, can the current PAP leadership maintain Singapore's economic dominance, or has it lost the vision and decisiveness that once made Singapore a global success story? Singapore's founding leaders, led by Lee Kuan Yew, built a strong foundation of public trust through their clear and results-driven leadership. In the early years, the People's Action Party, PA, maintained an unshakable grip on power, largely because of its ability to deliver economic growth, job stability, and social progress. Singaporeans saw rapid improvements in their quality of life, from public housing and infrastructure to education and healthcare. The government's strict but effective policies reassured citizens that the sacrifices they made, such as limited political freedoms, were necessary for long-term success. During this period, political opposition was minimal, and alternative parties struggled to gain traction. PAP's dominance was nearly absolute, and elections were largely seen as a confirmation of its continued rule rather than a contest. Public trust was high because the leadership delivered on its promises, and there was little room for political debates about alternative paths for the nation. However, in recent years, Singapore's political landscape has begun to shift. The current PAP leadership, under Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, continues to emphasize continuity and stability, but it faces a more politically aware and engaged electorate. Opposition parties such as the Workers' Party (WP) and the Progress Singapore Party (PSP) have gained momentum, winning more parliamentary seats and breaking PAP's once unquestioned dominance. One of the biggest challenges for the PAP today is the perception that it has become too bureaucratic and disconnected from the everyday struggles of Singaporeans. Rising living costs, job competition, and concerns over immigration policies have led many to question whether the government is prioritizing political control over the well-being of its people. Unlike in the past, where PAP's policies were seen as benefiting all Singaporeans, today's leadership faces criticism for favoring big businesses and foreign investments at the expense of the middle class. Social media has played a crucial role in shaping this new political awareness. Platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube have given Singaporeans access to alternative viewpoints, political discourse, and real-time discussions on government policies. Unlike traditional media, which has long been controlled or influenced by state regulations, social media has allowed opposition voices to reach wider audiences. This shift has made it harder for the PAP to maintain its previous level of control over political narratives. As the 2025 elections approach, the key question is whether the PAP can regain the strong public trust it once had, or if the growing political opposition will continue to challenge its dominance. Will Singaporeans vote for continuity, or are they ready for a political shift? The answer will shape the nation's future in ways that were once unthinkable in Singapore's tightly controlled political landscape. The future of the People's Action Party, PAP, and Singapore's political landscape hinges on one critical question. Can the PAP evolve to meet the changing expectations of Singaporeans, or will the nation see a shift toward greater political diversity? As the 2025 elections approach, PAP faces mounting pressure to reconnect with the people and address the growing concerns over cost of living, housing affordability, job security, and social inequality. While the government continues to emphasize stability and long-term planning, many Singaporeans feel that today's leadership lacks the visionary drive of the founding generation. If PAP wants to maintain its dominance, it will need to prove that it is still the best choice for the future of Singapore, rather than relying on past achievements. One of the biggest questions heading into the 2025 elections is whether Singaporeans are ready to embrace more political competition. The Workers' Party (WP) and Progress Singapore Party (PSP) have already made significant inroads, winning seats in Parliament and proving that opposition voices can be more than just symbolic. If these parties continue to gain support, it could signal a major shift in Singapore's traditionally one-party dominated system. However, any change in Singapore's political landscape is likely to be gradual rather than sudden. The PAP still commands a strong support base, particularly among older generations who value stability over political experimentation. At the same time, younger voters and middle-class Singaporeans are increasingly open to alternative viewpoints, especially as they experience the economic challenges of high living costs and a competitive job market. The 2025 election could serve as a defining moment for Singapore's future. If PAP suffers significant losses or faces a strong opposition challenge, it may be forced to rethink its policies and governance approach. On the other hand, if it retains its dominance, it will need to work harder to address public dissatisfaction and prevent further political fragmentation in the years ahead. Ultimately, Singapore's next chapter will be shaped by the will of its people. Will they choose continuity and stability under PAP, or will they push for a more pluralistic political system? The outcome of the 2025 elections could set the tone for Singapore's governance for years to come. Singapore stands at a crossroads. The legacy of Lee Kuan Yew and the founding leaders remains deeply ingrained in the nation's identity, but the challenges of today require new solutions. The People's Action Party (AP) has long been credited with Singapore's economic success, But growing dissatisfaction among citizens suggests that trust in the government is shifting. As the 2025 elections approach, the key question remains: can PAP evolve and adapt to the concerns of modern Singaporeans, or will political diversity become a new reality for the country? With rising living costs, economic uncertainties, and increasing calls for transparency and accountability, voters have more reasons than ever to reconsider their choices. What do you think? Can today's PAP leaders match the legacy of Singapore's founding generation, or is the nation heading toward a political shift? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into Singapore's evolving political